Politically, things are actually not going very well for the established parties in Britain at the moment. This is a very recent poll that you can see from Ipsos here, and it has Reform on 34%. Because the kind of meme that, oh, well, Reform are not the establishment, and so we can vote for them, as a protest vote against the establishment, has run rampant across the country. Now, I personally don't think that Reform actually do provide a substantive alternative to the mainstream, but that's beside the point. The perception is what matters here. But what you'll notice there is that Labour are on 25%, which is pretty bad, considering Keir Starmer came in, I think it was 52%, approval rating, or like optimism rating, whatever they call it. And he's just halved that. And the Conservatives are down to 15%. And they were on, no, sorry, I think Labour are on about 35%, sorry. But the Conservatives are on 52% under Boris. And you can see that this is just absolutely devastating for both parties. This is a real existential threat. I mean, the Conservatives getting down to 15% is brutal, and just goes to show you that they've chosen the wrong party leader. But the thing is, so have the Labour Party, because this can be these sort of results. This is just, there are many different polls, right? But they all show basically the same thing, which is the existing parties getting absolutely crushed. So at the moment, the Conservatives are on about 123, I think, MPs, down from their 380 MPs. Absolute bloodbath at the last election. Well, that's what Labour are looking at for the next election. That very similar absolute bloodbath, going from 420 or so MPs down to 118 MPs in this prediction. But I mean, at least they're going to keep the Outer Hebrides. So that's something. But as you can see, this is just grim. Absolutely grim. I mean, the Conservatives have become half as big as the Liberal Democrats by this. Like, this is just probably unprecedented, at least in my lifetime, in modern politics. This is probably something similar to when the Liberal Party died at the beginning of the 20th century. But, this is... Nigel Farage must be licking his lips at this, because, of course, this is a Reform landslide to 377. And I think you need some 315 to have an absolute majority. Was it 325? I think it's 325, actually, to have an absolute majority in the Parliament. So for him to have 377... Now, you might be thinking, well, who would those 377 MPs be? And you can't ask Nigel because he's no idea. He's out of allies, he's out of friends. And when he wins, and I do think that he will win the next government, if everything carries on exactly as it is now, he's a shoo-in. And the question then is, well, who does Nigel Farage form a government with? He hasn't got any allies. He hasn't got any experts around him. He hasn't got anyone with, and when I say experts, I mean people with expertise. People who would be competent at doing the jobs. He hasn't got anyone. And so the Labour Party are looking at an absolute shellacking, as the Americans would say, just a bloodbath, absolute bloodbath. The Conservatives down to 29 MPs. I mean, you cannot carry on this trajectory in the Conservative Party and think that this is somehow going to be something you can weather. Nobody is happy with the Conservative Party, and rightly so, don't get me wrong. That it was under Boris, where Jenrick was the immigration minister, and Priti Patel and Rishi Sunak, that the hordes, again, literally millions of foreigners were imported at a rate that totally unprecedented and nobody could see coming. And apparently, Boris reportedly said that he wanted to do it to make the people at the Financial Times like him. So he commanded them to open the floodgates so the people at the Financial Times stopped giving him hell. That was it. He just wanted to get back in their good graces. It's like, right, that is... Well, I hope they're taking you out to dinner, Boris. I hope they're very happy with you. But anyway, so as you can see, this is bad news for the political establishment. And whatever you think of Nigel Farage, and I'm not exactly his biggest fan, at least he heralds a kind of political change. Because the problem that we've had for decades in this country is the uniparty plantation. As in, oh, I've got to vote for Labour or Conservative, Labour or Conservative. So actually, there are more options than Labour and Conservative, and maybe we would have more responsive politics if people were prepared to vote for those other options. So at the very least, what Nigel Farage is doing here is giving people permission not to vote for the Labour and Conservative consensus, which is great. I mean, that's fantastic. That's exactly what we need. That at least bursts things apart and allows the opportunity for new parties and new consensuses to come forth. Something that maybe has a more reflective attitude towards immigration that matches the British public's attitude and on basically any issue, to be honest. But the point is, this means that it looks like the two main parties have got to choose. Either they change or they die. And this is good news for anyone who's sick of the way things are. So at the moment, there's a kind of revolt going on in Labour. Now, the revolt in Labour is not actually because they're looking at the polls and going, hang on a second, we're about to get slaughtered. We're about to get relegated to the dustbin of history. No, the revolt in Labour is over Keir Starmer deciding that actually, you know what we're going to have to do, guys, is cut benefits payments. It has to be done because the British state simply can't afford them and we're going to end up going bankrupt, like Birmingham's Labour Council. And this has caused people in his party to start spurging out. They're angry at Morgan McSweeney, who is sort of Keir Starmer's Dominic Cummings, as in like an advisor who actually understands, oh no, the British people want this and they want that. And you're going to start really feeling it in the polls if you don't actually do some of the things they actually want. And so obviously the backbenchers are just like, well, you know what? I hate Morgan McSweeney. And the thing is, he probably wrote Keir Starmer's Rivers of Blood speech where he called where he said that immigration had done uncalculable damage to the country, right? That was probably Morgan McSweeney who wrote that. And Keir Starmer kind of walked that back as well, saying that was a bit stronger than I would have liked. But too late, you've said it and we've got it. We've got the clip. But yeah, so basically, as you can see, the anonymous backbenchers, because obviously Keir Starmer runs his party like an absolute tyrant, so you can't speak about this openly. But the anonymous backbenchers are furious that he might cut the welfare payments. But the thing is, this creates a few problems. So if there is a backbench revolt in Labour, which would be unusual, this happens all the time in the Conservatives, but it'd be unusual. I mean, you just think about the number of Conservative prime ministers we've had in the last 10 years. You can see that the Conservatives are quite willing to backstab their own. But it's unusual in Labour. So if Labour do this, the problem is that the problem they have is that it could well trigger a general election. And if it triggers a general election, they're well aware that they aren't going to win that, right? Like Labour doesn't have anyone, just like the Conservatives, Labour doesn't have anyone good, charismatic and competent around that they can draw on. They go, okay, now it's your time to shine. Go on, go out there and wow them. What are we going to do? Angela Rayner? Wes Streeting? Jess Phillips? Like, sorry, who are Labour putting forward to win the next election, right? And so one of the main concerns is, well, hang on a second. If you have a backbench revolt and somehow oust Keir Starmer, it may well trigger a general election, and we're not going to win that. So Nigel Farage won't have to wait until 2029 to become Prime Minister and mess everything up. And so that's probably the only thing that's going to hold this back. But the thing is, Keir Starmer is on thin ice. Like, again, you can't look at these ratings. I mean, these are the personal satisfaction ratings for each of the party leaders at the moment. You can't look at these and say, oh yeah, Keir Starmer's doing great. He's 19% satisfied, 73% dissatisfied. And he's probably got a worse rating than Pol Pot in Cambodia at the height of the genocide. Like this is crazy how 3/4 of people just hate Starmer and hate the government. And 19 and 16% are in favour. Kemi Badenoch, though, doing even worse. Like, okay, she's not quite as hated. A larger percentage of the public are like, well, I don't really know. But 60% against for 11% for, that's not good. Like, this is crazy. And the problem that the Conservatives have here, is that Kemi Badenoch just lacks all charisma. Right? She's not likable. I don't really want to hang out with her. And that is a real issue in politics. I mean, I don't particularly want to hang out with Keir Starmer either, but like, there's something, Keir Starmer's a bit of a blank slate, right? Whereas Kemi Badenoch is actually kind of unappealing. And I actually would like, if I was at a bar and she was talking to a group of people, I'd go and talk to someone else. Because I don't like her, and she doesn't come across as very friendly. Ed Davey is doing slightly better, but as you can see at the top, well, it's Nigel Farage. And now, Nigel Farage has always come with a lot of baggage. 49% of the people just genuinely hate him. But 34% are in favour. And apart from Ed Davey, Nigel Farage, in fact, even including Ed Davey, if you have a net approval, Nigel Farage is pretty much doing the best. And Ed Davey has got 40% as meh, because he's not really doing anything political. If he came out and actually made some hard political statements, then I'm sure that would change. But anyway, so unsurprisingly, you'll see that in the Conservative Party, well, things are getting into Truss territory. I think the Conservatives are terrible for abandoning Liz Truss on all of this. Like, I was never a huge fan of Liz Truss, but she's definitely come out stronger on the other side of it, as in her rhetoric, her positions, and the things she's saying were true. And the Tory party basically setting her out as a scapegoat, which they still do, just makes them look weak and pathetic. They should have an internal narrative as to why Liz Truss got backstabbed, why she was taken out by the Bank of England, and why she's right about the quangocracy. Frankly, they should have all of these narratives, but they don't. And so they just sit there and go, yeah, well, that's a bleeding wound, and we'll just let that continue to bleed. And so this is why the Labour Party and the left are still harping on about Liz Truss constantly. They're constantly going on about Liz Truss. It's like, yeah, she was only in power for 42 days or something like that. And yet still, over and over and over, they're going on about Liz Truss. Because what it is they've pushed the bayonet in and felt mush. And so they're keeping on going. And until the Conservatives can put some steel there to prevent them from constantly harping on the narrative, the Liz Truss whip will be something they're constantly lashed with. But the point being, of course, is that things are bad for Kemi Badenoch, and everyone can be like, well, she's not very good. Apparently, she's lazy. Apparently, she's always late. Apparently, she's not very friendly and often doesn't pay attention to meetings. Apparently, she's constantly scrolling. These are just reports from the people around her. I can't verify any of these things. But this is what people say. And it's like, right, okay, that's not exactly good, is it? Right, and in this, they point out that Robert Jemrick is at least out doing things. He's out, like, making a video about the thing. He's actually, like the other day, he did a thing with Thomas Skinner about tool theft. Okay, yeah, these are at least things. He was at the pub. I actually met him there as well. Personally, I don't find Robert Jemrick that impressive. I don't. There's something vaguely inauthentic about Jemrick that I can't put my finger on. But I don't really trust and don't really agree with. And also, Jemrick is not exactly a ball of charisma, right? One of the things that you have to have, I'm afraid, when it comes to going to leadership or politics, is charisma. You have to be likable. You have to be the kind of person that people want to be around. And Jemrick's a bit of an empty suit in that regard. He says the right things, he goes out and does things, but he's not very interesting. And he's not box office, as some people might put it. But then neither is Kemi Badenoch. And so the Conservatives are in the same sort of position. What are their options? Well, I'm sure that a lot of them are like, God, should we just bring Boris back? He can just throw Priti Patel and the rest of them under the bus when it comes to immigration. I mean, the thing is, and this is the part I really hate, is that Boris probably can win people over, right? He's smooth enough and charismatic enough and has that kind of bumbling demeanor that means that I think that he probably could make people... he's likable enough that people will want to believe it wasn't really his fault and he just got outflanked by the institutions or something like this. And that's the genuine fear that I have. And that's the genuine threat that Nigel Farage faces, I think. He faces nothing out of the Labour Party, none of the existing Conservatives, and none of the other parties. It's Boris Johnson. If the Conservatives just bite the bullet, if they get down to 12% in the polls, they're like, okay, look, we'll just bring Boris back. We're on 52% with Boris. Like, people will forgive him, I think. And I know a lot of people won't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. But I genuinely think that if the Tories brought Boris back, the public would basically forgive him. He'd come out, he'd give some very humble-sounding, sort of bumbling speech, and then he'd turn it around into, right, and so we have to fix this, we have to send all of these people home, blah, 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 blah. He'd come out with something quite far on the right, something about denaturalizing the people he brought in, probably. And he would make promises that he wouldn't keep, and the Conservatives could pull it back, which honestly is the biggest way. I'd rather Farage than Boris. Right? It would be more useful to have Farage than Boris. It would be nice if Boris's political career was basically just over, so the road would be free and open for something new to come along. Anyway, the point being is we are entering a time of regime change in Britain. Things are changing. Both of the major parties have realised that they've been saddled with absolute losers that nobody likes and don't want, and so they're going to have to really think about it. I mean, the fact that Kemi Badenoch is less popular than Keir Starmer is actually just shocking, frankly. Only 11% to 19%. That's crazy. But anyway, the point is that the Labour and Tories, they realise that they have to do something, and so whispers and stirrings of regime change are on the horizon. They're probably not going to do anything for like 6 months, a year, maybe. It's probably going to be a while, but at least something is giving, right? They've realised that things are actually as they appear. Right, the polls have been very, very consistent. Farage is well in the lead at this point. The consequences of this is definitely going to be an absolute slaughter for the old party. Now, like I've said before, I know I keep going on, I'm totally in favour of zero seating the Conservatives and the Labour Party. Right, if either one was prepared to properly change, then maybe. But honestly, I just want new parties at this point. Right, I would like it if some plucky young MP for Great Yarmouth or something would start a new party, just sort of, the based British party. It's like, yeah, no, we're just going to sort all this out. Millions must go back. I would be much more in favour of that than supporting one of the old parties. And I think that Reform are going to be a flash in the pan, because we were told repeatedly that Reform is Nigel Farage. Now, this isn't really true. There was polling done on Reform members, and only about a third of them were actually committed to Nigel Farage as a personality. And you remember that Nigel was thinking about going over to America, but for some reason Donald Trump didn't ask him to go. And then the poll from Clacton came out where Reformers looked like it was going to win, and so Farage booted out whoever was standing there and decided he was going to stand himself. And so the Reform were on the rise anyway. But we've been repeatedly told, no, Reform are only at this point because of Nigel Farage. Let's take that as given then. That means that without Nigel Farage, Reform are just going to collapse back into the dust. So Nigel Farage, in his 60s, lifelong smoker and drinker, he's not going to be around forever. And so when Nigel Farage goes, I think the Reform probably will collapse down. And so having a proper, rooted alternative right-wing party, an actually right-wing party, would be really, really useful. And so in about 10 or 15 years, we could see a fairly based government, perhaps, he says optimistically.